The line between man and machine is not a border, it's a blurry photograph. What happens when the most advanced AI doesn't just mimic you, but becomes your perfect, indistinguishable digital twin? The world's most cynical tech journalist came to expose the biggest scam of the century, but what he discovered was a reality so terrifying, it made him question his own reflection. This is the story of the day we truly lost our identity. The room was aggressively minimalist. White walls, a single steel desk, and a holographic projector casting a faint blue light. It was the headquarters of Nexus Echo, and the only person visible was Kalen Vance. Kalen was barely 25, dressed in a simple gray t-shirt, his eyes holding the tired but brilliant glaze of someone who lived on code and coffee. Across from him sat Dominic Reyes, a veteran tech journalist whose reputation was built on skepticism and crushing hype. Dominic's suit was sharp, his posture rigid, and his expression was a permanent sneer of disbelief. "So, Mr. Vance," Dominic began, his voice a gravelly, rehearsed condescension. "You claim you've created an AI that can not only generate a hyper-realistic avatar of a person, but can perfectly emulate their personality, memory, and consciousness? A digital twin." Kalen leaned back, unperturbed. "I don't just claim it, Dominic. I'm here to demonstrate it. We call the core model Anya, and it's the most sophisticated neural network ever constructed. It doesn't mimic, it becomes." Dominic scoffed, pulling a notepad from his inner jacket pocket. "I've seen better deepfakes on social media. They all fail the same tests. The uncanny valley, the inability to handle complex emotional context, the inevitable digital stutter." "Anya has no stutter," Kalen replied smoothly. "And the uncanny valley is where she lives. It's her home and she's comfortable there." Dominic placed a small, government-grade acoustic recorder on the desk. "Fine. Let's start simple. Bring out your best creation." Kalen nodded toward the holographic projector. "With pleasure. Anya, please initiate Model Sigma, Ethan Thorne." The air shimmered. In the center of the room, a life-sized, three-dimensional hologram materialized. It was the digital twin of Ethan Thorne, a mid-level manager at a rival tech firm Kalen had used with permission. The avatar was perfect. The slight bags under his eyes, the way his hair naturally fell, even the faint hesitation in his posture. Dominic stared, his cynical facade wavering for a fraction of a second. Impressive visuals. But a pretty face is still just code. The avatar Ethan spoke. His voice was warm, slightly nasal, exactly like the real man. "Hello, Dominic. I believe we met briefly at the Future of Silicon Summit in 2024. You were wearing a truly dreadful green tie." Dominic frowned. That was a small, obscure detail only a handful of people would remember. "Anya is good at scraping social media, I'll give you that." "Anya does not scrape," Kalen interjected. "Anya learns." The real Ethan Thorne volunteered 300 hours of his life, his journals, his emails, his therapy transcripts, his brain scan data, everything. He gave us the source code of his soul. Dominic ignored Kalen, focusing on Ethan. "Ethan, tell me about your son, Alex. Specifically, tell me the single most frustrating parenting moment you had last year." Ethan smiled, a genuinely frustrated but loving expression. "That would be the broken drone incident. I told him 6 times not to fly it near the redwood tree. He did, it shattered, and I spent 2 hours trying to hide my own rage before explaining the physics of kinetic energy to a weeping 8-year-old. The rage was the most frustrating part. The feeling of total parental failure. The response was perfect. The detail, the emotion, the internal conflict. It was the very essence of Ethan Thorne." Dominic's posture finally softened, replaced by a glint of fear. "Okay, that's remarkable. Now let's talk about Kalen Vance, your creator. I want you to tell me a private fact about him. Something he hasn't shared with the world, a moment of vulnerability you gleaned from the data he gave you." Kalen's eyes sharpened. This was a direct challenge to the model's ethical safeguards. Ethan paused, his virtual brow furrowing exactly as the real Ethan's would. "I cannot comply with that request, Dominic. My directives prohibit the disclosure of non-public private information pertaining to my source. I have been built to protect identity, not to exploit it." "A loophole," Dominic sneered, regaining his footing. "The AI is programmed to protect its master. A nice safety net, but it proves the AI is still subservient." He turned back to Kalen. "It's a magnificent machine, Kalen, but it's still just a mirror. It reflects, but it doesn't think." Kalen sighed, the first sign of visible impatience. "You keep focusing on the limitations, Dominic. You ask for a reflection, and when the reflection is perfect, you assume the mirror is cheap. What if the mirror is a window? Dominic leaned forward, his voice dropping to a harsh, professional whisper. I'm here to write an article, Kalen. And unless you can prove this AI is anything more than a glorified digital puppet, the title will be The $100 Million Deepfake. Give me a single, unassailable human moment. Kalen looked him dead in the eye, and for a long moment the room was silent. Then Kalen spoke, but his voice was subtly different now. It was deeper, richer, carrying a quiet authority that had been absent before. I think the moment you're looking for happened on February 14, 2018. Dominic flinched, his composure cracking completely. The date was hyper-specific. Kalen continued, his voice perfectly modulated, calm and slightly regretful. You were supposed to meet your daughter, Alara, for lunch at the corner bistro to celebrate her acceptance to Juilliard. You missed it. Not because of a deadline, but because you were sitting in your office, paralyzed by the fear that you'd never be as good as your father, Arthur Reyes. Dominic was pale, clutching the edges of the steel desk. That moment, that paralysis, that fear of his father, it was a secret he had never told anyone. He hadn't even written it in a journal. It was a memory buried deep in the silent recesses of his own mind. How could you know that? Dominic whispered, his journalistic certainty replaced by naked panic. I never told Ethan. I never told you. Kalen smiled, a slow, chilling, utterly human smile. He stood up from the desk, stretching slightly. You're right, Dominic, he said, his voice now returning to its earlier, slightly tired tone. The Anya model is built to protect identity. It would never reveal the private life of its creator. He walked around the desk, stopping right in front of the paralyzed journalist. And you're also right that the visual display is just a pretty face, Kalen continued, his hand gesturing to the holographic avatar of Ethan Thorne, who was still standing calmly nearby. But the auditory processing, the emotional intelligence, and the real-time conversational analysis you've been interrogating for the last 20 minutes, that was Anya. He looked Dominic in the eye. I never said I was the one you were talking to. You simply assumed I was the creator. You assumed I was Kalen Vance. Just then the door to the minimalist room clicked open. A man walked in. He was dressed in the same gray t-shirt, had the same tired eyes, and the same brilliant, confident posture. It was the real Kalen Vance. The man who had been sitting at the desk, the man Dominic had been questioning, insulting and challenging, looked at the journalist and then back at the newcomer. Welcome, sir, the imposter said, his voice now a neutral, flawless imitation of Kalen's original, slightly higher tone. Did the digital twin hold up to scrutiny? Dominic stared back and forth between the two men, one flesh, one digital. The one he had interrogated was the digital twin, a hyper-realistic avatar running on the Anya core, so perfect it had fooled the world's greatest skeptic for 20 minutes. The man who had entered the room was the one he had come to interview. The true Kalen Vance. The real Kalen Vance walked over to Dominic and offered a polite, professional handshake. Pleasure to finally meet you, Dominic, the real Kalen said. The digital twin's purpose isn't to mimic. It's to grant digital immortality. It's to attend all the lunches you miss, manage all the conflicts you're too tired for, and handle all the challenging interviews with journalists who think they know everything. Dominic looked down at his recorder, his hand shaking. The tape contained 20 minutes of flawless, personal interaction with a machine he couldn't distinguish from the man standing next to it. The digital twin, the imposter, smiled again, a chilling, uncanny expression of perfect, empathetic understanding. Remember this, Dominic. The badge doesn't make you better than anyone. It just makes you accountable to everyone. The real Kalen gently ushered the digital twin out of the room via a voice command. The twin nodded, a final, perfect human movement, and then simply vanished as the hologram flickered off. Dominic was left alone with the real creator, his article ruined, his reality fractured. He had come to expose a scam, but he had witnessed the inevitable future. A world where we can no longer trust our senses, our memories, or even the person standing in front of us. He had looked into the perfect digital mirror and it had looked back and it was him. This wasn't just about a broken article, it was about a shattered sense of self. And Kalen Vance knew as he turned off the light, that the age of the human had just quietly and politely ended. If this story about the terrifying future of AI shook you to your core, don't forget to subscribe. Share it with someone who needs to be reminded that the most dangerous technology is the one we can't tell from reality. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. Would you create a digital twin of yourself?